Okay, good morning. My name's Katrina Milne. I am the Marketing Manager at Cereals and Fruit Focus. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. It will be discussing telling your brand truth through marketing and PR. This webinar is part of our Cereals Support Campaign, which is a free series of webinars that offers advice and assistance for the arable farming community. The format of today's webinar will be two 10-minute presentations delivered by two experts within the marketing and PR field, specific to the agricultural space. So our first speaker will be Claire Tring, Marketing Manager and Client Lead at Soap Creative. Soap Creative is a branding and design agency working in the ag, farming and diversification space. Claire will then be followed by Olivia Cooper, which I'm sure many of you know, Olivia from specialist PR agency Agri-Hub. After that, we'll have a 10-minute Q&A session, which you can drop off any questions or concerns on the GoToWebinar toolbar. And at this point, I'm going to be turning it over to Claire Tring from Soap Creative. She'll be kickstarting the webinar. Thank you, Claire.
Hey. Hello, everyone. I'm Claire, the Marketing Manager and Client Lead at Soap Creative. Thank you for joining us today. I'm sure there are many different reasons why people have decided to attend today. Perhaps you're looking to grow your business and looking for some new ideas, or maybe you're thinking of diversifying into new areas and want to ensure your business is positioned correctly. Whatever your reason for attending, hopefully in this short webinar, we will give you a little inspiration and guidance as to how you might achieve your goals. Today's session from me is divided into two parts. The first focusing on brand and brand identity, and the second part will cover a case study of a campaign from the farming and tourism industry. So to start, I thought I'd ask everyone a question. I'd like everyone to have a think about their favourite brand. It might be your favourite brand of clothing, or perhaps a particular food brand you love, or your favourite make of car, whatever springs to mind. What do you think of when you think of that brand? How does it make you feel? When we think of Apple, for example, a brand that we're all really familiar with, many of us might think of their iconic logo, which is modern and minimalist, or maybe you think of their style and the usability of their devices. Perhaps you might feel excited and inspired by the brand and excited at the thought of buying the latest iPhone. Let's take another example, perhaps one that's more relevant to your industry, such as Farmers Weekly. When I asked Olivia to think about what sprang to mind when she thought of Farmers Weekly, she said, muddy boots, their vibrant red and yellow logo. She said that they were thought leaders in the industry and a reliable and trusted source of information who were long established. Perhaps your business works particularly closely with them and you see them as a trusted partner. The point I'm trying to make is that these companies' values can be seen across everything they do and every touch point, from their packaging or product design, the language used in their communications and on their website, throughout their retail outlets, even through to the way their staff behave and talk. A brand is about so much more than a logo. It's all of these things put together. So let's look at what is a brand. In terms of a definition of what a brand is, obviously there are hundreds of definitions out there, and I'm sure you already have your own ideas. However, this is how we like to explain it here at Soap. Your brand is your business's personality and its identity. It is the experience that your customers receive, whether they're buying a product, when they phone through to customer service and speak to your staff. It's how your business looks, sounds, feels and acts. Your brand is your business's reputation and what people say about you behind your back. So what goes into creating a brand? A logo is simply one graphical representation of your brand or business. When we look to developing a brand or even repositioning a brand, there are a whole bunch of other elements that we need to consider. One of the most important elements that goes into developing your brand is your why. Think about why you started your business in the first place. What is it you feel you can do better than your competitors? What problems are you trying to solve? Where do you want your business to be in 5 or 10 years? Next, and equally important, is understanding your ideal customer. Everything you do in your business should start with your target audience in mind, whether it's brand development, product development, marketing, pricing. The more you understand who you are trying to target, the more effective your marketing will be and the less money you will waste. Try to be as specific as you can. For example, if you're looking to launch a new top-of-the-range large tractor, Rather than broadly targeting all farmers, consider being more specific by targeting large-scale farmers who need something with a bit more horsepower and who are tech savvy. If you are selling a compact tractor, then small holdings would be your target. It doesn't mean you're not interested in the others, but gives you a focus for your efforts and helps to create an offering that solves real problems and therefore provide products and services that are relevant. So when you think about developing your brand's personality, it helps to think of your brand as a person. If your brand was a person, how would you describe them? What would they sound like? How would they dress? Once you know who you want to be, you can let it shine through in everything you do, not only your words, but through your design and every action. Perhaps you want to be a trusted and supportive friend who always gives great advice and gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling to be around, or a big brother or sister, someone who can always rely on and makes you feel safe. Remember, people do business with other people, not other businesses. Also, how do you want to sound to your customers? Do you want to be informal and chatty or professional and helpful? Will you use slang or technical jargon, or will you stay away from that, keeping your language plain and simple to understand? Again, it comes back to your target audience and what would resonate with them. So once you have considered all these elements and you've decided who you want to be, a design team will look at all of these elements and bring them together in the form of a design concept. This will include your logo variations, textures, patterns, images, fonts, colors, all the typical design elements of a brand. So once you have your brand, it's over to you to uphold your reputation. You've talked the talk and now you need to walk the walk and be authentic. Make sure your actions are consistent with the personality you've created. If you're not genuine, people will see right through you and won't trust in your brand. So why is a brand so important and not just a logo? To grow and develop your company into a professional and future-proof business that stands out among your competitors, you need a brand, not a logo. Something that customers will remember and associate with and want to do business with, not just once, but time and time again. Brands connect with customers. Think about it. You feel more connected with people you identify with, and it's the same for a brand. If you feel like a brand gets you, you're much more likely to buy their products and become a brand ambassador. So how to develop a strong brand? The key to creating a strong brand identity that accurately reflects your business and its values and personality is through continuity and consistency and authenticity. The way you speak to your customers and how you present yourselves must be recognizable, regardless of the channel you are communicating to your customers with. As you can see from this image, there are potentially hundreds of different touch points for your brand. Some are visible and some are not. One way of helping to achieve this consistency is through creating brand guidelines and, of course, sticking to them. Brand authenticity, which is very hard to say, is key to building a strong brand, and in fact, it has never been more important. It's been shown that in times of crisis, consumers tend to turn to brands they know and trust. So how can you build brand authenticity? It's simple. You don't just say, you actually do. Remember, you're a human talking to other human beings. Don't be a faceless corporate entity. Show empathy. If you have a shared understanding and a shared connection, people will be more willing to listen. Honesty breeds loyalty. Honesty builds longer lasting connections that stay with us. And finally, you need to show value. By offering direct value as well as a practical solution to a genuine problem, you will build trust, authority, and loyalty in these most uncertain times. So for this part of the webinar, we'd like to share a case study with you. Many of you will already have a strong brand identity, and we wanted to demonstrate how this could be used in different and creative ways to effectively get a message across, while still being true to your brand. This particular campaign was one we worked on a few years ago for a company called Farmstay. Farmstay is a cooperative run by its members. Their primary aim is to promote tourism, farm tourism in the UK, and help farmers to broaden their income base through diversification. With the holiday market being so competitive and literally thousands of holiday agents within the UK, they were looking for a way to really stand out from the crowd and fend off competition. Soap negotiated a deal allowing Farmstay to use the Peter Rabbit film assets across its marketing collateral. The campaign concept was about going on an adventure in the countryside, which is obviously what the Peter Rabbit story is all about. There are clear synergies between the brands, including appealing to a family audience, the idea of seeking an outdoor adventure in the Great British countryside, so we felt it was a great fit. The campaign ran across multiple channels, online, social media, website, email, and also offline, including print and advertising, and also included a competition to generate more engagement. The campaign was a real success, leading to a significant increase in social media engagement. In terms of cost, it was a win-win situation as the contra deal cost nothing to the client. They simply had to follow Sony's brand guidelines and include a copyright notice alongside the assets. We also negotiated similar contra deals with White's Cheese, Weird Fish and Miles Tea. This demonstrates how when you have a strong brand identity and a clear vision, simply by adding a theme or piggybacking an established and respected brand with similar values, you can add real credibility to your campaign and reach a much wider audience. Perhaps this could work for your business. Why don't you have a think about what companies are out there that you could have a similar target audience with shared values and synergies that you could form a contra deal or partnership with? So I'll leave that thought with you. I guess the key takeaway from today is to be authentic and remember that actions speak louder than words, and that's the key to telling your brand truth. Thank you for listening. I hope you found it useful. I believe we'll be asking for your feedback by way of a survey probably early next week, so please look out for that and let us know what we could do better next time. Of course, if you have any questions, then feel free to get in touch after the webinar, and if you'd like a copy of the presentation, then please send us an email. So that's it from me. I'll hand over to Olivia now. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Claire. That was really, really interesting. So having heard about how to use your branding effectively, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to marry that in with your PR campaigns for best results. Ali is just going to share my slides because I couldn't get them to work on my computer. So I'll just wait for that. Just also a quick reminder, please do put your questions into the chat box so we can come up with those and answer those at the end. Thank you, Ali. If we can click through. I thought I'd start with a definition of public relations, as it's a commonly misunderstood area. According to the Public Relations Society of America, PR is a strategic communication process that builds mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and their publics. Closer to home, the Chartered Institute of Public Relations says this: PR is about reputation, the result of what you do, what you say, and what others say about you. Public relations is the discipline which looks after reputation, with the aim of earning understanding and support and influencing opinion and behaviour. It is the planned and sustained effort to establish and maintain goodwill and mutual understanding between an organisation and its publics. Thank you, Ali. What it shouldn't be is a one-off press release. Could we click through, Ali? Thanks. Carrying the expectations of doubling sales. It has to be a drip feed approach. One press release every 6 months isn't going to cement your brand in readers' minds, but being featured in editorial several times, whether that's regularly in one magazine or spread across a variety of publications, will get people thinking that your company is worth taking notice of. I found a wonderful quote on the internet the other day. For a business not to advertise is like winking at a girl in the dark. You know what you're doing, but no one else does. Thank you, Ali. I'd argue that the same is true of PR. It should be an integrated part of your marketing campaign. That's because people place a lot more trust in an article than they do in an advert. It's more believable. It's telling your truth. And that is the point of PR. A press release or a carefully placed feature aims to highlight your business's news and achievements in the media. When your potential customers hear or read about your business in the press, it has a far greater impact than an advert and at a significantly lower cost. In a time of lockdown, good PR is more valuable than ever. It helps you tell your brand's story to your customers and prospects. How else are they going to get to know you? You can advertise all you like, but there's a limit to how much storytelling you can do in an advert. Good PR can set you up as the expert in your field, a thought leader, the go-to spokesperson in your sector. But you can't do that unless it's authentic. And you really need to be thinking about how you can help your customers, not what you can sell them. I follow a chap called Peter Wendt on LinkedIn, whose posts always get me reading, and I'm going to share a couple of his thoughts with you. His posts often start with, "I'm going to tell you a story," and here's one. Thanks, Ali. So, you're on the lash with a mate, post-lockdown, obviously. You found a bar, ordered some drinks, and you're settling in for some black belt banter. Then he whips out his holiday photos, and your heart sinks. The first one is him at a bar behind a large pina colada. Politely, you paint the "I'm really interested" look on your face. The second is of him on the beach. By the fifth photo, you're drifting off. By the 10th, you're desperately trying to remember the safe word. We've all been there. How can someone be so oblivious to how dull it is? But then companies go and do exactly the same thing on their website or in press releases, telling customers what they want to sell them. In Peter's words, no one gives a damn about you or your products. They care about themselves and their own problems. So if you want to engage your prospects, you've got to talk about their holiday photos, not yours. Tell a story with them at the heart of it. Next slide, please. If I put my journalist's hat on for a moment, I despair of the number of press releases I receive that are all about the product, or how excited Business A is to be merging with Business B. Farmers Weekly readers don't care if you're excited, and they aren't interested in the intricacies of how this gizmo is an upgrade on the previous one. They care about the impact that said gizmo or business merger is going to have on them. Will it make their farming operations easier and more efficient? Will it benefit their bottom line? If so, they might actually read on. Thanks, Sally. So when I'm writing a press release, I always try to keep the end reader, the farmer, in mind. If you're selling a service, offer your advice for free, whether that's through articles, podcasts, or social media. People will start to see you as the go-to expert on that topic. If you're selling a product, get your customers to tell their stories about how said product has improved their lives. Farmers love to read or hear about what other farmers are up to, so cultivate case studies and invite journalists to write about them. Thanks, Annie. Right now, lockdown is obviously hampering the way we normally communicate, so businesses have to find different ways to get in front of prospective clients. This can be done by proactively seeking editorial coverage, while also thinking laterally about ways to engage the press. Virtual farm walks, webinars, virtual conferences. Just because the country is in lockdown doesn't mean we can't adapt and find new ways to build those important relationships. And don't forget about communicating within your own business. That's just as important. Telling your brand truth means you have to walk the talk. If your public-facing image doesn't match what's really going on internally, then ultimately that will come out. Thanks, Sally. So how do you find the best stories to tell? One thing I find again and again is that companies don't always know what's newsworthy and what's not. After all, they're just doing their day-to-day job. What's interesting about that? That's where regular calls with your PR consultant will pay dividends, as they will be able to identify the real story and also guide you on hot topics in the news, which you should be commenting on. Next slide, please. When communicating, it's critically important to think about the target audience. If you're looking to raise your profile in a particular geographical area, then going all out to get national coverage is unnecessary. Equally, if you want to speak to other professionals, then being printed in a consumer-facing publication won't help. And you have to target the right media, which means that you must consider their own audience. Countryfile, which appears to be aimed at middle-class housewives and has done a huge amount of good for the industry, won't send Adam Henson down to your research facility to film a feature on the technical details of plant breeding. Likewise, CPM won't be desperately interested in the fact that you've just cut the ribbon on a new office, whereas local publications may well be. So you've identified your story and your target outlet. Now you have to think about how you can construct your approach. Maybe you want to give one journalist an exclusive story, or perhaps you have something newsworthy enough to send out as a press release far and wide. Here's where I'd advocate caution. Unless you've had media training, don't try to write it yourself. Thanks, Sally. Of course, I would say that, wouldn't I? But honestly, journalists are busy people and get hundreds of emails every day. You may have a good story to tell, but if the first sentence or two of your press release doesn't grab me, I stop reading. Your news needs to grab the editor from the outset and make immediately clear the benefit to the end reader, your consumer. Thanks, Sally. Of course, there are a myriad other ways for your business to get its message across. speaking opportunities at webinars, networking at events, chatting on social media, all are good methods of communication. The key is to know your messaging is on point and that your brand authenticity shines through in everything that you do. Earlier, I spoke about one of the golden rules of communication, to understand your target audience. And I shall end with another, which is that communication is a two-way process. Thanks, Ali. So on that, I shall stop talking and open the floor to any questions or comments that you would like to make. Please do put your questions into the box, in the chat box, and Ali will feed them through.
Thank you for that presentation, Olivia, and you, Claire. They were very interesting. We are still waiting for some questions to be dropped into the box. For now, though, I can kickstart some questions. So Claire, have we got you? Have we got you back?
I'm here.
Okay, so I do have a question. So how can we encourage our staff teams to buy in to our brands?
Yeah, well, the key to kind of getting buy-in internally is kind of involving people from the beginning, make them part of the journey, but make it part of the onboarding process when someone joins a company, you know, make them understand what the brand is all about, perhaps run a workshop and sort of go through the brand guidelines at that point. It's kind of getting people involved really, and also sort of living your values, you know, not just sort of saying that you do something, but actually doing it, you know, through and through workshops and things like that.
Lovely. Olivia, how would you say that we could integrate PR and marketing if we're working with different agencies for each?
Okay, it's entirely possible. You don't have to have everything under one roof. We work with a number of different marketing agencies, whether they're internal marketing team or a separate contracted agency. It's just about having a good dialogue, making sure that you have regular meetings, that everybody is updated on what's happening. Often the wheels fall off when the main team, that the client forgets to communicate with the PR agency and with the marketing agency. So it's very important just to make sure everyone is in the room, really.
Great. In terms of social media, how would you say that we could improve engagement? I'll send this over to Claire.
Okay. Really the key, especially at this time, is about sort of providing content that adds value and is helpful to people, rather than the focus on sort of selling your products, but like what Olivia said, you just need to sort of be relevant, make sure that you know, what you're giving them is kind of useful and relevant to them, and that helps to build trust with them, rather than sort of sales, which is not kind of, people don't want to be sold to at this time. Maybe running competitions and sort of credible giveaways. When I say credible giveaways, I mean kind of sort of low value sort of giveaways, rather than sort of, you know, it doesn't have to be sort of a big value prize. Smaller it is, kind of more people have more trust in that and more likely to get involved, and we found that that really helps improve engagement a lot in the past.
Completely agree. Still waiting on some questions, so if you do have any questions, guys, please feel free to drop them into the toolbar. As well, I've just one question that I did just think of was to ensure that there's consistency in the brand. How can we ensure that there's how can we ensure that our brand has consistency? Sorry. This is to either one of you, whoever wants to take the question.
Well, brand guidelines really is one of the ways in achieving consistency, and kind of making sure everyone's aware of that and how to use your brand in whatever situation they're in, whether it's a third-party supplier or again, as I said, kind of making that part of the onboarding process, so that all your staff and then your employees know how to use the brand. again, just getting people involved really from the beginning, I think is key.
Lovely. Olivia, do you have anything to add?
I'm not really a branding expert, so I'm good at the PR and the words, not so good at the branding aspect.
No worries. Also, if someone didn't have a big budget, how can they best use what they have? What would you recommend, Claire?
Similar, I guess, to what I've said is a kind of content, relevant and useful content. What, as we said before, if you provide a service, then perhaps offer that service for free, offer advice in the area that you're an expert in. That doesn't really cost much, sharing advice, and as I said, that way you build trust. You don't have to spend lots of money. I think at this time it is all about building trust with people and being helpful, and then over time, then they come to you when they need to.
Okay, lovely. Olivia, making best use of PR budgets, if not a lot to spend, aren't retailers expensive? It's just a question here.
Yeah, I mean, retainers can be expensive, and you don't have to have a huge budget to spend. It's about making the most of what you've got. It's about identifying the really important stories. We work with clients who are everything from a full-on sort of integrated annual campaign to people who just want to send out a few press releases, maybe one a month, just when they've got interesting things to say. So I do think that it's important to keep having that drip feed. So don't just do one press release and hope that it's going to get you a lot of coverage. But equally, you don't need a massive budget if you don't have it.
Lovely. We do have another question that's come in. So the industry can be subject to quite a lot of negative press, which can include social media. How would you suggest brands deal with any negativity that might be directed at them? Olivia, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? I think you need to just keep telling your positive stories. Personally, I'm not a great fan of engaging with the extremist types. So, farming is under a lot of pressure from vegans, for example. Personally, I don't think it's worth trying to engage with them and change their minds about things. But I think what you do need to do is keep getting the positive messages out there and backed up by figures, by science. Don't engage in vitriol. Don't start mudslinging. Yeah, just stay positive, I think. Claire, would you ever have anything to add?
I think the PR, Olivia is the expert in the PR field. Yeah. Got that one off, sorry. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with Olivia.
Lovely. I'm just waiting for any more questions to come through. Even if you don't have any questions and you think about something later on, we will be adding the contact details of both Olivia and Claire into this webinar. So I'll put that through into the chat in a moment. So if you do have any questions later on and want to discuss anything with them, just feel free to get in touch with them directly. I think that's it on questions for now. So yeah, thank you both for joining us today for today's webinar. And it will be recorded, so the session will be up on our website probably the beginning of next week. And yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining us. So I hope you enjoy your weekend, and we'll leave it at that.
Thanks very much, Katrina.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katrina. Bye.
Bye.